Normally, I'm talking about players or coaches doing crazy shit. This time, we're talking about a state broadcaster doing something absolutely insane. You guys want to talk about something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable? That's not my mustache. Let's talk about it. Because the state broadcaster in Germany called ARD decided to, as it's described in this Sky Sports article, poll 1,304 randomly selected participants. Look, that I'm just going to go right off the top here. I'm not somebody that took a ton of science classes. I actually avoided them like the plague because I didn't like science very much. But somewhere in the science and math, crossover, there is the statistics, right? And the way to do polls and the way not to do polls, the way they've worded this, they just plucked a random 1,304 people off the street. If I go to a Klan rally, right, and I poll 1,000 people at the world's biggest Klan rally about race relations, I'm probably going to get a pretty distorted answer. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm projecting the answer to this poll out onto all of Germany. But what is very clear to me is that this is just such a stupid poll, right? Like, this is just really, really dumb. Like, I don't know what ARD was attempting to accomplish with this. I don't know why they're asking this question, right? Because no matter what happens, ARD comes out looking terrible because they're the ones that are starting this. No giant controversy came out from within the national team. There isn't some flaming racist inside of the German FA, right? This is just one of the state broadcasters in Germany deciding to ask a poll. Right, I don't even know if I've said the poll yet, but it was: would you prefer if more players with white skin were playing for Germany? Sorry, I got ahead of myself. That was the poll question. It's just one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Like, why they felt the need to ask that? Like, it was so. If you're gonna do a poll, what productive thing are we gonna learn? Right, polling a random 1,304 people about whether they would prefer more players with white skin to be playing for Germany. Right. No, I know. I know, right? I grew up in the United States, all right? I've lived here my entire life. I know that people are afraid of other people that don't look or sound like them, right? Because the United States has really dominated that corner of the market recently, right? Like, I am very aware of that. And I'm assuming that this ARD poll became a thing because all of a sudden there were one or too many black players in the German national team, and grandma got uncomfortable, right? But there's a line in the movie Cool Runnings, which is a great movie. It's about how Jamaica created a bobsled team. Jamaica still has a bobsled program because it turns out a large part of bobsledding is the sprint at the beginning, and Jamaica loves track and field and trains these track and field athletes and then just takes them and makes them push a sled down a hill, right? But there is a quote from the movie that always stood out to me because the Olympic Committee was trying to, in a very thinly veiled racist way, try and ban the Jamaican bobsled team from competing. And the coach of the team goes into the Olympic Committee meeting to argue his case and said, "Oh, I didn't know 4 black men in a sled could make you blush." And my basic answer to this: 21% of the people that responded to this poll said they would prefer if more players were white in the German national team. To which my response is, "Oh, I didn't know so many black guys in a German uniform could make you blush. I didn't know that made you embarrassed." And if it does, why? Right? Because here's the deal. Everybody watch this. Globalization. Okay, the world is shrinking. And that means people can travel into more different areas. And there are a lot of bad things happening in a lot of different parts of the world. Okay. And with the world shrinking, a lot of bad things happening in different parts of the world's getting all jumbled up, right? At a very serious speed. Now, you cannot put that genie back in the bottle, right? Pandora's box has already been opened up. Honestly, Pandora's box has been opened up ever since Christopher Columbus accidentally landed in the Dominican Republic, okay? And ever since then, we've just been accelerating towards the world being jumbled up. There is no way possible, even if for some sick, weird, twisted reason you want this to be true, for for Nigel Farage to start singing Rule Britannia and all of a sudden a giant wall springs up on the sea, and everybody goes back to where they came from, right? And all of a sudden the world is just kumbayaing all over again. No, we're all jumbled up. We're all going to have to get used to each other, all right? And part of that jumbling up is that there's going to be a dude on the German national team who's like Antonio Rudiger, right? Who's, I believe his mom's from Sierra Leone or something. But Antonio Rudiger is German. I've had this conversation around N'Golo Kante before. People are afraid of N'Golo. They're not actually afraid of N'Golo Kante. He's like the nicest guy ever, right? But his name, right? And he's very dark-skinned. And people just assume that he's not French. He was born in Paris, right? And there will be other people that'll say he's like not French or whatever. But this is a conversation that seems to be becoming more and more prevalent. We had it, the last time I had it significantly was around the French national team. So a lot of the dudes in the French national team were black. Hey, guess what? That's because a lot of France is black, right? It's the same reason that the United States has a lot of black guys in its national team, because a lot of the United States is black. National teams have and always will be a reflection of the countries from which they come from. There is a story, right? In the 26 players that are chosen to represent your country, there is a story in every single one of them. That team is like a tapestry, and it is telling the modern story of your country. And you just don't get a say in what you want that to look like, what your idyllic world is supposed to look like, because we live in the world now. We live in the world as it exists now. And what people really struggle to do, right? And I remember having this conversation about N'Golo Kante. So I'll bring this to Germany, okay? Is what people really struggle to do is put themselves in somebody else's position, right? I struggle with this sometimes too, right? So if somebody cuts me off on the sidewalk, I'm like, what the like I'm about to lose my mind, okay? But then you know, every once in a while you got to be like, hey, do I really need to get to the store that fast? Looks like they're in a big hurry. Maybe they actually need to get somewhere. You know, that's a very simplified version. But for somebody like N'Golo Kante, or somebody like Antonio Rudiger, or somebody like Serge Gnabry, right, or somebody like Jamal Musiala, what are they feeling? What are they supposed to feel like? Who's their country? Who are they? Who do they represent? Right? Because maybe you are somebody that is a first or second generation immigrant, right? I'm not. I think I'm like fifth generation. Right? So I never had to deal with these sorts of questions. So I almost have to defer in the way that they're answered. But it's important to consider how those people feel. And I feel like that's not necessarily ever really talked about. Right? Because you're telling me Antonio Rudiger doesn't feel German? If I was making an argument, this dude's represented Germany internationally a lot. You know what I mean? I hate to keep leaning into Antonio Rudiger, but he is, you know, kind of one of my favorite examples, I guess, off of the German national team of somebody that has been there a long time and kind of ridden this roller coaster of being with the good German national team and the bad German national team, right? But I am somebody, as a white dude born in Florida in the United States, that never had to deal with any sort of crisis of identity. I never had somebody coming up to me and telling me that I wasn't American or that I didn't belong, right? Maybe I was just hiding behind my beard and my mustache and people just assumed I was fine, right? But I can't imagine that if you were born somewhere and raised somewhere and you're raised in that culture and raised in that language and your friends are from there, and then all of a sudden someday you make it to the international stage and somebody looks at you and goes, oh, you're not German. Like that's disorienting. That's disenchanting. I mean, look at what happened to Mesut Ozil, right? Like I don't want to get into the political side of that, but what is very clear to me when watching the Mesut Ozil thing is that he became very disenchanted with what was going on. Right, Mesut Ozil. Andy Murray used to say this. He's like, when I win, I'm British. When I lose, I'm Scottish. Right, and it was the same sort of thing going on with Mesut Ozil. It's like, well, when we win, and I'm one of the best players in the world, you know, it's yay Germany. But when we're losing, and maybe I have a bad game, all of a sudden I'm not German anymore. You know, it's that is a very, very difficult spot to be in. So these people are already dealing with that a lot. Right, and I honestly I'd feel bad for making that sort of thing worse, because if you are that person, do you not feel German? You're born and raised in Germany. You speak German. Your life is German. Now, if you're a professional athlete, obviously, at the age of 15, you're probably moving somewhere else or whatever. So your life is a little weirder than the normal person that is born and raised in a particular country. But I got some bad news for everybody. We got to learn how to get along. You know what I'm saying? Like these sorts of questions, they're not helping. I don't know who came up with this question, but it's absolutely absurd, right, to be asking this. And obviously, Julian Nagelsmann, the coach of the German national team, came out and immediately, because he's coaching all these guys. He knows all these guys personally. He's like, this is ridiculous. Like, I believe he condemned the survey. Joshua Kimmich came out and said that the survey was, like, obviously racist and everything. And I have to agree with him. I just think it is a weird conversation to be having, right? Because the genie's been out of the bottle for a long time. All right, I referenced history, so I'm just gonna lay some things in there for you. But it's like the Ottoman Empire, right? There were people of all sorts of colors in the Ottoman Empire, right? And they were like, yeah, they had the same sort of friction that honestly we have now in certain cases, but they also got along a lot of the time. They all fought in the same army and everything else. Like the Roman Empire, right? All of North Africa was in the Roman Empire. Now, ethnically and culturally, it was a very different area than it is now. This was before the Muslim conquest, and they swept through North Africa and kind of changed the gene pool a little bit. So nobody actually really knows exactly what North Africa was like before that, because it's very hard to. I'm getting into really nerdy kind of historical stuff, but I'm just saying a lot of the empires that we have very clear images in our minds of what they looked like, and like everybody looked like Julius Caesar, some sort of balding guy with a big nose. Right? It wasn't like that. There was a lot of variety, and that has just been heightened as the world has expanded and it's become easier to travel between places, and the world's become more and more interconnected. Shout out Christopher Columbus for landing in the Dominican Republic on accident, right? Because here we are, and we got to figure it out. Seriously. And like, at what point are we going to? I don't know. I have no idea. It's probably the time that it's actually going to be fully figured out is probably going to be way past the time that we're all here. Right, but what I, as somebody that is not necessarily an expert in these matters, all I'm trying to do is just be nice to everybody, right, and be understanding of where somebody else is coming from. Some people will try and make a question like this political or economical, but if you're going to handle the amount of immigration that your country is comfortable with or can economically sustain, you're going to have to handle that politically. But the people that are already they're already there. You know what I mean? Like they're already there. And my goodness, if you were born and raised in a certain area, I mean, you have, right? Look, Lyndon Dykes is the striker for the Scottish national team. That dude was born and raised in Australia. Look, I'm not saying that he shouldn't be the striker for the Scottish national team. His parents are Scottish, and that's sick. But Lyndon Dykes is less Scottish than basically any of these guys in the German national team are German, but I'm not hearing a peep about that. Also, I feel bad that he got hurt and can't play in the Euros. I love him as a player, but anybody that's pretending this conversation has anything other to do with the fact that certain skin colors and certain cultures make people wildly uncomfortable is an idiot. It needs to smell the coffee and wake up in the morning, because that's all this is, right? That's the only part of this conversation that matters, and it's not going to change. As much as people are going to try and put the genie back in the bottle, the genie's already flown away. The genie's completely gone. Pandora's box is open. And you gotta learn to be okay with it. Like you really just have to learn. Your country's got lots of different looking people in it now. Congratulations. You probably have way better food than you did before, honestly. Yeah.